When you resist the technological shift, when you resist the integration of AI, when you resist replacing the menial tasks, that's when you become obsolete.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Today's Agency. I'm Shawn Butler, your host, marketing professor, growth consultant, exit planner, and 3-times agency founder. And today I'm sitting down for a virtual conversation with Josh von Scheiner, founder and CEO of A Different Story, a New York City-based agency focused on storytelling from the brand level all the way down to the sales level. Josh brings 18 years of marketing experience to the table today, with 16 of those years as a principal, owner, and founder of advertising agencies. All the way back, you were doing this in 2007. Josh, it's great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Sure. No, I appreciate your willingness to do this. And it's great to see you again. You're looking good, by the way.
No, thank you. We're doing what we can. Surviving.
For those of you not benefiting from the video feed, Josh has a nice setup. He has one of the those industrial style office setups. He looks like he's in a good place, and he's got, is that a chilled coffee you're sipping on?
Yeah, not chilled, hot only.
Well, it's still before noon, so that's
caffeine. Yeah, caffeine and adrenaline get the day going.
So, Josh, we've known each other a little bit. You've seen the industry.
Yeah.
On today's agency, the biggest thing we're trying to dive into is how the marketing world has changed as we've seen it around us, especially for agency owners. And I'm looking, when that intro, we saw the number 2007. And 2007 stands out to me because we hit something a little disruptive right around that time.
Oh my God. Yeah, banks started collapsing right after I started my first agency, and we went right into the 2008 crisis. Not to mention, my first agency really focused on digital advertising, PR, and social media for music brands, so album releases and tours.
Very cool.
This is when piracy was kind of hitting its peak, as the industry was still geared towards selling plastic, but consumers were shifting increasingly towards streaming. So it was a very weird time to start an agency, but within all that chaos is really where the opportunities lie. Consumer habits were shifting quite dramatically. Facebook was just coming out of colleges and universities. MySpace was just selling 500 million. Everybody thought it was way too big of a number.
I remember these days. Yeah, Facebook had started out where it was .edu only.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So in these humongous shifts, while it can be a little stressful to start a new company, then that's also really where all the opportunities lie. And that's kind of set the tone for my career since, and have looked for those giant shifts in behavior, in culture, in business, where those new opportunities start popping up.
Sure. I think it's just an interesting retrospective in light of what everybody's seeing right now. I mean, people are predicting recessions. We're starting to see some signs that might be the way. Certainly inflation and stock markets have been affected. Cryptocurrency, if you're watching that game. The perspective I'd love to get from you is, how have you seen, again, specifically to marketing and advertising in the agency world, what changes are you seeing today that maybe even remind you of the world as you saw it back in 2007, 2008?
Yeah, I think we're really starting to see technology encroach on creativity, right? We've had this huge upset in media. We've seen media budgets swell in comparison to creative budgets. It's kind of a ratio over the past few decades because one can only optimize what one can measure, right? And creativity has been this magic black hole where, good ideas happen over here. We don't necessarily know how they do outside of a direct response kind of standpoint, which is why now you have companies that specialize in social selling or Amazon or what have you that are different than creative agencies, different from branding agencies. But I think we're starting to see that same technological approach move its way further and further upstream. And we're starting to see some technologies come into play that are actually replacing a lot of the work done by people at the bottom, a lot of AI tools, a lot of machine learning, doing the optimizing, in some cases now doing the copywriting, doing the image selection, that I think is going to change the industry at the low end, very similar to how WordPress and Squarespace and then Wix replaced the need to have designers and developers, turn out landing pages or very quick websites.
Absolutely. You're talking about forms of automation. And I like the parallel of the industrial revolution to industrial automation, but the first ones out were low skilled. Mm-hmm. Now we're starting to see with the integration of artificial intelligence and a lot of, some of the more recent technology applications I think, are moving higher up the category, right? Am I on the same page? Am I picking up your prediction?
Oh, you absolutely are. And I think with some of the new measurement capabilities happening with TV, we're going to see some new measurement tools that are getting into, kind of traditional areas that were very difficult to measure with the same granularity as, say, banner ads, something like TV, something like print, branding campaigns, which have always kind of been difficult to attach some kind of success metric to. I think we're going to start getting very specific around. I think there's a lot of pressure right now to, understand what constitutes success or failure from an awareness generating campaign, right? And I think over the last 20 years, we've created this big divide arbitrarily between branding and sales, as if the two don't impact each other at all. And I think with increased visibility into the efficacy of both, we're going to see that barrier start to fall. And we're going to look at it more like a flowing spectrum than we are two different practices.
Wow. I like that. The implications of that are there's going to be a lot of silos that drop inside of agency and inside on the production, on the client side.
Yeah, because these silos were not erected in order to address consumers. They were erected in order to help brands and companies, right?
Right. Yeah.
People see something on TV, people see something online, people hear it in the news, people see it from their, favorite celebrity, people see it, from their friends online. Like, it's still all impacting their brain in kind of similar ways. And all these various inputs are being put together to generate some kind of response that hopefully leads to a sale, right? So to treat them as so radically different just doesn't make sense. They're all pieces of the same process, right? This is our idea of a different story. This is all brand storytelling, regardless of where the point of brand interaction comes from, regardless of who's speaking, right? Who's delivering this message. This is all brand storytelling, and this all needs to be kind of brought together to deliver one holistic message to the consumer they take away. So all these different forms of communication, all these different forms of advertising can work together to deliver this message, instead of delivering discombobulated dozens of messages in different pieces that may or may not align with each other.
Now, you see that in place today. Could you give me an example or some case studies of how that looks when it's done correctly?
Yeah. So maybe a great illustrative example would be some of the work that we do with Weleda. They're a global natural ingredient skincare brand out of Europe. And we help them with particularly some of their social media strategy, their influencer marketing. But that the influencer marketing we do very quickly bleeds over into PR, bleeds over into advertising, bleeds over into social media, where we're working with some of these kind of top industry makeup artists, these kind of trusted sources of information, both to consumers, to celebrities, to other makeup artists, to beauty influencers, right? So,
love it.
We're working
with influencers. You're creating entertainment as well as product messaging.
Right. So we're creating content. They're creating content that's going out directly to people within social media, say TikTok and Instagram. These same people are being interviewed by beauty publications, by women's interest publications on what their routines are. They're citing the products. They're giving it to their celebrity clients, who then mention it in their own interviews. We're sponsoring red carpet kind of green room experiences where it's kind of like product placements just on the shelf behind them.
Sure.
And their content is then, being repurposed for our own social channels. It's being boosted to a much wider audience. So the consumer, wherever they're going to learn about new beauty products or skincare routines, or even celebrity news, what celebrities are using, wherever they happen to go to learn about new products or beauty in general, they're seeing the same kind of message from Weleda, the same kind of use cases, the same products. Right. So we can actually coordinate which products we're promoting so that, we're not hitting the consumer with 15, 20 different products. They don't ever remember which one they saw, which one they can use in which kind of scenario. And as a result, their sales have increased significantly here in the US and continues to do so, just leaping forward year after year.
Sure. No, there's so much smart thinking on that. Now, you implied that you're able to do product specific targeting with that. So you're not showing the whole array of products, you're showing just what's most relevant or interesting to that person?
Well, what we're doing is we're kind of unifying the storytelling. So instead of the Amazon team saying, well, this is, these are the products we're working on over here, and the PR team saying these products we're working on over here, and the social media team saying, well, this is, it's summer, let's just do products that have flowers because they're blooming right now. And the influencer team going, well, everyone loves this particular product, so let's do that. We're able to kind of coordinate the storytelling across all these groups and all these different touch points with consumers to tell the same story.
No, it's smart the way you pulled that together. It's really an interesting use of rapid movement, from point of sale to collecting data to communication. I'm sure it's an elaborate process that's going on inside of there, but would you say that a lot of that's been enabled by, new methods of data, CRM, some of the collection and communication methods we have?
So in this particular case, I don't even think it's technology driven. It's just mindset driven, particularly on the client side, to make sure that this level of storytelling coordination is happening.
They've just been doing it the old way so long.
Yeah, I mean, and as budgets increase, everybody wants specialists. So everybody brings in specialists. And before you know it, you have 13, 15 different people, and they all have to interact with different clients. So you have, a dozen different brand managers at some of these large companies, and those lines of communications break down very easily, which is where the value of something like A Different Story comes in, right? Where we can act as a single agency that owns what we call the brand narrative, this kind of internal story that acts as a creative brief across all these disparate groups. Sometimes we're not even the ones creating the content per se. We are just almost like a keeper of the brand narrative that briefs all these other internal teams and all these other agencies to make sure that all of these stories align.
Got it. No, it's a critical role. And it's interesting that the companies are outsourcing that to agencies, because you're going to come in, what I imagine is you come in with a clean slate, able to see the forest for the individual trees, where they're looking at it just so in the thick of things.
Yeah. And over the past 70 years, marketing has really kind of, you got to look at the background where marketing came from. It was really designed to be an interruptive experience, right? Like look at the cultural formats we had to work with over the last 100 years, right? You had movies and television where people had a single screen on and they weren't going anywhere. So you interrupt that experience and you blast them with 30 seconds of information. If you injected some kind of emotional experience in it, they were more likely to remember it, but really you were there to sell your product. Almost bullet points. This is what we do.
I think is what we used to write.
Right. You had billboards that did the same thing. You're in your car, you're passing the sign, you're going to see it. You had print, you couldn't skip the page per se. You turn the page, there's the ad, right? So we have this advertising model that's really about injecting information in a different experience. Now, though, when we look at what's happened culturally, very few people are watching like a long form content on a single screen or are a captive audience in such a way that we can interrupt that experience and they're still captive. So that model starts to break down, and the landscape is just fractured. There's very few places where you can go where you're just universally going to reach a target audience. So, and especially as the number of messages people have seen have increased, the chances of any individual impression making an actual impression on that individual drop significantly, right? So we have to coordinate our storytelling if we're going to have any kind of result at all. And we need to do this across kind of a complicated landscape, right? It needs to happen as people now are entering the sales funnel later and later in the decision process, right? So we need to get outside of the brand doing the actual storytelling, because by the time people are kind of seeing that content, half the time we've already missed them, right? Like if I was like, hey, here's $50,000, go out and buy a car. I'm sure you could name 3 brands that you might consider.
Yeah. Audi, Lexus, and the Gladiator.
Yeah. The problem is BMW, like if I'm like, Sean's shopping, BMW, it's time to get in there. Like they've already missed the boat. Right. So this is the time where that storytelling already needed to happen, right? And it needed to happen a long time ago with amplifying the content of your friends that are driving, the stories of your friends that are driving BMWs. It needs to happen by placing it in television shows and movies. And it needs to be coordinated then with TV ads or online placements or social media content, what have you, that then targets you when you start considering that shopping process. So the sales funnel, while it's still there, it's still intact, right? It's more complicated from a messaging standpoint. The ecosystem has so many more touch points. So the importance of coordinating all of this from a brand storytelling standpoint becomes significantly more important. And that's really what we do, is we kind of coordinate that storytelling.
I love it. What was valuable is with that pop quiz you just did, I'm looking at my answers going, how come those three came to mind? And it's literally what you just said. Hopefully for all those who are playing along at home, you took a moment and you said, hey, what are the top three brands that I could, get into for a $50,000 car? That eliminates some, that scales back, your dreams and goals if you're capped at 50 grand on a vehicle. But I'm looking, and literally what you said is true, Josh. I thought of vehicles I'd recently seen or talked to the owners of that were fun. All three of those are convertibles, because right now where I live, everybody's got the top off their car. It's perfect convertible weather season.
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes marketers make is they think this, sometimes when they get tactical and they get in the weeds, is we forget that humans make decisions as groups, right? We're pack animals, we're herd animals. We do things to fit in with the tribes that we associate with. We do things that reflect the people around us as well, right? So if I want Shawn to buy a car, I can't just target Shawn. I got to target everybody around Shawn. And I need to show Shawn that the people around him are doing X, Y, and Z, and he should join they call it the bandwagon effect, right?
Right. No, it's Asimov's. You can't predict the future for one person, but you can predict it for everyone.
Exactly. And that's what this coordinated storytelling then does. As you go about your day, you start to see similar stories. We've surrounded you with similar stories via PR, advertising, social media, online recommendations, influencer marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And then some of those, then once we've kind of had this approach, and once we start focusing less on information stories and more on evocative stories that you're more likely to remember seeing and take with you, let you percolate, then we can start using technology, kind of more of it's been around long enough, we call it traditional targeting mechanisms, to say, Shawn has now been prepped. Let's put the offer in front of him.
Right. Now I'm thinking more BMW than I was.
Right. There we go.
Prior to our conversation. Well, Josh, no, I love the insight you bring to this and the way you've developed a different story to really fit the current dynamics, I think, that are affecting agencies and your clientele. Can I ask where you see, so a different story is not that old, of your 18 years in marketing, 16 of them have been running your own businesses. And where do you see a different story going in the near future? Where do you see it, 1 to 3 years from now?
Yes, I think 1 to 3 years from now, what I want to do is I want to see technology play a much more significant role, and it's going to happen whether I want it to or not. So might as well hop on the train in that storytelling process, right? When we're establishing what this brand narrative needs to be and what this story needs to be and how we measure success. Right now, I think agencies and brands and marketers do a great job of measuring response to any individual piece of content if it results in a sale.
Right. Kind of attribution failing.
Right. I think we need a better understanding of how this holistic system works, right? If we're going to unify or tackle this from holistic storytelling standpoint, we then need to be able to measure and optimize on holistic storytelling level, right? And that means, how do we understand brand perception at the highest level? How do we know when people are moving into the next kind of phase down, say from awareness to interest? How are we measuring the drop off, right? Just like you would if it was like clicks on a website. And how are we then optimizing down into interest? How are we defining interest? How are we measuring interest? How are we moving them down to intent and then into action? And I think once we can get more granular into each one of those phases, we'll have much stronger and more relevant storytelling. And I think, there's going to be some challenges along the way. Like, how do we do that in a cookieless environment, right? How we do that with greater privacy controls? How do we do that respecting the privacy of the consumer? And those are the challenges that we get to overcome here the next few years.
Absolutely. No, I love the predictions and the thinking that you've put into that. Now, you may know this, my audience here is agency owners, and they're always on the lookout for new ways to benefit from what's coming next. I've gained a lot just from the way you talked about the unsiloing, the uncoupling really of, or the reconnecting of sales and marketing together. Now, in the ever-changing world of the agency model, what would you want to make sure that agency owners take away from this conversation?
I think the big thing for agency owners, we're all experts in very specific things. It's how we get our jobs right. There's very few jobs left for the generalist who does everything. I think the challenge for agency owners is to always think about how your piece fits into a larger storytelling framework, right? The context of your own storytelling. And particularly with creative agencies, how can technology and measurement inform and enhance my storytelling, right? I think there's a big part of the agency world that still says creativity is this off limits kind of human endeavor that sometimes can't be measured. Good ideas can come from anywhere except, machines, so to speak.
Right.
I think that's going to change. And I think we need to look at not how technology is going to replace us, but how technology is going to enhance us.
Right. The answer is not yet on some of those things.
Yeah. Well, as long as one answers that question, I think one's job is safe. Where it becomes dangerous is when you resist the technological shift, and when you resist the integration of AI, when you resist replacing the menial tasks with automation, machine learning, and AI, that's when you become obsolete.
No, it's a great point that a lot of people who are automated out of jobs or machinists are still employed. They went back to work, they reskilled, and there's plenty of things that human beings are required to do if they're willing to put in the work and do the thinking part.
Right.
Oh, it's a great takeaway. How can people best find you and get more of your thinking?
Our website, www.differentstory.com, or LinkedIn is a very easy way to see what we're up to, follow the work that we're doing with our clients.
Perfect. Well, as you could tell, today's podcast was full of insights, forecasts, some strategies and predictions, the uprising of the automation AI robots. And we love to take a look at what's coming next and give you our time, our tips, our expertise on the things that could be of most benefit to you. What would be of most benefit to us is if you could take the time to leave us a review so we can build our community of high growth entrepreneurs. If you'd like to connect with me, go to Relevant for Agencies or today'sagencypodcast.com. A pleasure to speak with you, Josh. Again, love the work you're doing there at Different Story and how you guys have weathered even the most recent upturns and how you're preparing for what's coming next in the turbulent economy of 2022.
Fingers crossed for all of us.